The stars stretched endlessly above the desolate planet, their light casting a soft glow over the barren landscape. The silence of the world was broken only by the soft hum of the human explorer's ship, hovering just above the ground. He was a lone traveler, one of many who ventured into the unknown corners of the galaxy. But unlike most explorers, he wasn't here on a mission for profit or fame. He was here for the thrill of discovery. His name was Mark, and he had always been fascinated by the stars. His ship, small and sturdy, was a reliable companion through the vast stretches of space. It had taken him to many distant worlds, but none quite like this one. The planet, unnamed and forgotten by most, seemed to have an eerie pull to it. It wasn't on any charts. No records of civilizations or past life forms existed. But for some reason, Mark felt an unexplainable urge to land here. As the ship's engines powered down, Mark surveyed the landscape below him. Rocky, desert-like, plains stretched as far as the eye could see. There were no signs of life, at least none that he could detect from his ship. The air was thin, but breathable enough for short periods of exploration. He knew he couldn't stay long, but something inside him urged him to step outside and see what lay ahead. He opened the hatch of his ship and stepped onto the planet's surface. The ground was cold beneath his boots, and a thin layer of dust swirled in the wind. The sky above was clear, dotted with distant stars. As he walked across the barren land, his thoughts wandered to the many places he had visited. But none of them had felt like this. None had felt so alive, in a strange. It was then that he heard a soft sound in the distance. At first he thought it was the wind, but as the noise grew louder, Mark realized it was something else. Something, or someone, was moving toward him. Curiosity piqued. Mark quickened his pace, his eyes scanning the horizon. He saw a figure, in the distance, moving slowly but steadily. The figure was tall, cloaked in a shimmering fabric that seemed to blend with the landscape. Mark's heart raced as he wondered what it could be. He had never encountered anything like this before. Was it another explorer, or something else entirely? The closer he got, the more he realized that the figure wasn't human. The shape was slender, with long limbs and an otherworldly grace. Her movements were almost hypnotic, as if she were gliding above the ground. As Mark drew nearer, he could make out more details. Her skin was a pale, ethereal shade of blue, and her eyes, glowing faintly, seemed to reflect the light of the stars. For a moment, Mark stood frozen in place, unsure of what to do. This was no ordinary encounter, this was something extraordinary. The woman, if that's what she was, stopped when she saw him, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. She didn't speak. She simply stared, as though studying him, sizing him up. "Are you lost?" Mark asked cautiously, his voice barely more than a whisper in the vast emptiness of the planet. His heart beat faster as he waited for a response, but she didn't answer. Instead, she took a small step toward him, her eyes never leaving his. Mark felt a strange pull, an unexplainable connection to her. He had encountered alien species before, but nothing like this. There was something about her presence that was both calming and unsettling. The way she moved, the way she looked at him, it was as though she knew things about him that he didn't even understand about himself. After a long silence, the alien woman finally spoke, her voice soft but clear. "I am not lost," she said, her words carrying a strange melody that made Mark's heart skip a beat. "I am here because I must be." Mark's mind raced. Was she a survivor of a long-lost civilization? A visitor from another world? He couldn't be sure. The only thing he knew for certain was that her presence was as mysterious as it was fascinating. "I'm Mark," he said, trying to break the tension. "I didn't expect to find anyone out here. What's your name?" She paused for a moment, as if considering his question. "I do not have a name like yours," she finally replied, her eyes never leaving his. "But you may call me Lyra." Lyra. The name felt as foreign as the woman herself. Mark tried to process everything that was happening, but it was overwhelming. His entire life had been spent exploring the unknown, but he never imagined something like this would occur. It was one thing to find ancient ruins or strange landscapes, but to find a living, breathing alien woman standing before him, it was something else entirely. "What are you doing here?" Mark asked, his voice a little shakier than he intended. "What is this place?" "I have been sent here," Lyra answered, her gaze softening. "My mission is to observe, to learn, and now, to meet you." Mark's curiosity grew even stronger. "What do you mean, meet me? I'm just a human explorer, I'm not important." Her eyes glinted, a hint of something deeper hiding behind the calm exterior. "You may not understand yet, but you are important, Mark, to me." Those words, simple yet profound, lingered in the air between them, leaving Mark to wonder if he was truly ready for what was coming. His heart raced, and he found himself caught between fear and fascination. Something had changed in the air, something he couldn't explain, but it was undeniable. Lyra took another step closer, her voice barely a whisper. "I have much to show you, and you have much to teach me." Mark swallowed hard, trying to steady his breath. This was no ordinary encounter. And whatever was about to unfold between them, he could feel it. This would change everything. Mark and Lyra stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their meeting lingering in the cold air between them. The vast barren planet stretched out around them, its emptiness mirroring the uncertainty Mark felt in his chest. He had never been one to shy away from challenges, but this felt different. There was something about Lyra that both fascinated and unsettled him. "So, what do you want to learn from me?" Mark finally asked, his voice betraying a mix of curiosity and hesitation. He couldn't shake the feeling that her presence was more than just a coincidence. Lyra's eyes met his, calm and focused, as though she could read his thoughts without needing to speak them. "I am here to understand," she said softly, her voice carrying a depth of meaning. "Your kind, your world, and your ways. I have seen many places, but I have never seen anything like you. Humans. You are unique." Mark felt a small rush of pride at her words, though he didn't fully understand what she meant. He had always known that humans were resilient, capable of surviving and adapting, but to hear it from an alien, it made him think about his species in a different light. "Well, I'm happy to share what I can," he replied, trying to keep his tone light. "I've been exploring planets for a while now, but nothing like this. It's a pretty quiet world, at least from what I can tell. Do you know anything about it?" Lyra paused, her gaze drifting to the horizon. "This place is not just a world," she said slowly, as though choosing her words carefully. "It is a place of transition, a crossroads for those who seek knowledge and understanding. Many beings have passed through here, though most do not remain." Mark raised an eyebrow. "A crossroads? What kind of crossroads?" "It is difficult to explain," Lyra said, her tone distant. "There are many ways to see the universe, many paths to follow. Some take them willingly, others are led here by fate, but only a few truly understand what they find." Mark felt a shiver run down his spine. The way she spoke made him feel as if he were standing on the edge of something much larger than he had ever realized. This wasn't just a random encounter. There was purpose behind it, something he couldn't yet grasp. "Well, I'm here now," Mark said, trying to make light of the situation. "So what do we do next?" Lyra turned her eyes back to him, a small, almost imperceptible smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "We learn," she said simply. Over the next few hours, they worked together to explore the planet. Mark showed Lyra how to use the basic equipment on his ship, teaching her things about the human way of living that she seemed eager to understand. In turn, Lyra shared fragments of her own knowledge, speaking about distant galaxies, strange species, and the wonders of the universe that Mark could barely begin to imagine. Despite their differences, Mark found himself growing more comfortable around her. There was something about the way she looked at him, as if she were truly seeing him for who he was, not just another human in the endless stretch of the galaxy. And though she didn't speak much about herself, Mark could sense there was much more to her than she let on. As the hours turned to days, their companionship deepened. They would sit together beneath the stars, talking about everything and nothing at all. Mark began to realize that Lyra wasn't just an alien. She was a person, just like him. She had fears, dreams, and doubts, though they were all wrapped in a language and culture he couldn't fully understand. One evening, as they sat by a fire made from the few resources Mark had gathered, Lyra spoke again. "Tell me about your world," she asked, her voice soft and contemplative. "What makes humans so different?" Mark leaned back, looking up at the stars above. It wasn't the first time she had asked him to explain humanity, but this time her question felt deeper, more personal. "I guess what makes us different is our ability to adapt. We don't always have the best resources or the most advanced technology, but we make do with what we've got, and we keep going. We don't give up easily." Lyra's gaze was steady, absorbing his words. "I see," she said quietly. "Your strength is not in your power, but in your persistence." Mark smiled at the thought. "Yeah, I suppose that's true. Humans are stubborn like that." Lyra tilted her head slightly, considering him with a thoughtful expression. "And yet, you also show great kindness. You help those you do not know even when there is no reward." Mark hesitated. "I guess that's just how we are. We help because it's the right thing to do. We look out for each other. There is much I do not understand about your species," Lyra said, her voice low, "but I wish to understand more." Mark met her gaze, feeling a warmth in his chest. "And I'll do my best to help you learn," he replied. As the days passed, Mark's initial sense of awe and uncertainty slowly gave way to a sense of comfort and camaraderie. He and Lyra were partners in a way he had never experienced before. Their shared experiences on the strange planet bonded them in a way that neither of them could have anticipated. But beneath the surface, something deeper was stirring in Mark's heart. The more time he spent with Lyra, the more he realized that his feelings for her were growing stronger. He found himself drawn to her in ways he couldn't fully explain. It wasn't just her beauty or her otherworldly nature. It was the connection they had forged, the way she made him see the universe in a different light. It was as if they were two halves of a whole, each learning from the other, each changing in ways they hadn't expected. Still, Mark wasn't sure where this path would lead. He had never considered the idea of falling in love with an alien. But as the days wore on, it seemed less and less like an impossible notion. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow across the land, Mark turned to Lyra and said, "There's something I need to tell you." Lyra met his gaze, her expression calm but curious. "What is it, Mark?" But before he could speak, something in the air shifted. The moment felt fragile, as though the universe itself were holding its breath. And in that silence, Mark knew that whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same. The days on the strange planet had begun to feel more like home for Mark than any place he had visited before. Each morning, he and Lyra would set off on another exploration, studying the planet's mysterious terrain or learning new things about each other. Mark had learned a great deal about Lyra's kind, their culture, their history, their customs. But there was still so much more to discover. The vastness of space had never seemed so small, not with Lyra by his side. Yet as much as Mark enjoyed the companionship, a deeper feeling had been growing inside him. It was more than just curiosity about the alien woman. He had never felt this way about anyone before, not even in the years he had spent on Earth. There was something about her, something in the way she spoke, in the way she looked at him, in the way she made him see the world differently, that made his heart race. Mark tried to ignore the feelings at first. It wasn't possible, he told himself. Lyra was from another world, another race entirely. They came from completely different places, with different cultures, different ways of thinking. How could he even begin to think that she could feel the same way about him? But as the days went by, Mark found it harder to push the feelings away. Every moment they spent together only seemed to strengthen his bond with her. He would catch himself looking at her for longer than he intended, noticing the way the light played off her pale skin, the way her eyes sparkled with wisdom beyond his comprehension. When she smiled, it made him feel as if everything was right in the universe. One evening, after a long day of exploring the planet's rocky cliffs, Mark found himself sitting beside Lyra near the campfire they had built. The night sky above them was filled with countless stars, each one a distant possibility, a world they might never visit. The warmth of the fire flickered between them, casting long shadows across the ground. Lyra had been quiet for a while, her eyes focused on the flames. Mark could sense that something was different about her tonight. She seemed more distant than usual, as though she were deep in thought. After a long silence, Mark finally spoke, his voice steady but unsure. "Lyra, there's something I need to tell you." She turned her head slightly, her luminous eyes locking onto his. "What is it, Mark?" Her tone was calm, but there was a softness in it that made him feel at ease. Mark took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been this nervous before, even when faced with danger on distant planets, but this was different, this was personal. I don't know how to say this, but I've been thinking a lot lately. About us. About everything. He paused, trying to find the right words. "I've never felt this way before, Lyra. I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them, as still and heavy as the night itself. Mark immediately felt a rush of emotion flood over him, fear, hope, and something else he couldn't quite name. It wasn't like any confession he had made before. He had never confessed his feelings to someone so alien, someone so different from him. Lyra was silent for a long time. Mark's heart thudded in his chest, the uncertainty growing with each passing second. Did he say the wrong thing? Had he ruined everything? Finally, Lyra spoke, her voice gentle but distant. "I do not know what love is, Mark." Her words were calm, but there was a sadness in them that Mark hadn't expected. "Where I come from, emotions are not as easily expressed as they are for your kind. We bond in different ways." Mark felt a chill run down his spine, but he couldn't let his feelings of doubt overpower him. He had already said the words, and now there was no turning back. "I don't expect you to feel the same way," he said quickly, trying to reassure her. "I just needed you to know how I feel. I know this is all different, but I had to tell you." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, her eyes studying him as if she were trying to understand him on a deeper level. "You humans," she said, softly, "are so quick to express what you feel. It is fascinating." Mark smiled nervously. "I guess we're not so complicated after all." "There is more to it than just words, Mark," Lyra said, her voice thoughtful. "Love, as you call it, is something deeper. I do not know if I can ever feel the way you do, but I can understand the connection you seek. You have shown me kindness, respect, and understanding. I appreciate that." Her words were not what Mark had hoped for, but they were more than he expected. It wasn't the confession of love he had dreamed of, but it was something real, something genuine. "I'm glad," he said, his voice soft. "That's all I wanted, to show you that we're not so different after all." Lyra's expression softened, and for a brief moment she looked almost vulnerable. "I do not understand all that you feel, Mark, but I will try. I will try to understand you, just as you are trying to understand me." Mark's heart swelled with warmth. It wasn't the answer he had hoped for, but it was something to hold on to. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to navigate this strange new bond between them. As they sat together, the stars above them continued to shine, each one a reminder of how small and vast the universe truly was. In that moment, Mark knew that no matter where their journey took them, he would cherish the connection they had. It was imperfect, uncertain, but it was real. And that was enough. The days that followed Mark's confession were filled with an unexpected tension. He tried to go about his daily routine, but his mind constantly returned to that moment by the fire. Lyra's words, though kind, echoed in his mind, and a small part of him couldn't shake the feeling of disappointment. She didn't love him. Not in the way he had hoped. But she had said she would try to understand. That gave him a glimmer of hope. They continued to explore the planet together, studying its terrain and learning about its strange energy sources. But as the days passed, Mark began to realize that the connection he felt for Lyra was only growing stronger. It wasn't just about affection anymore. It was about something deeper. Lyra had become someone he relied on, someone he trusted. Despite her alien nature, there was an undeniable bond between them. One evening, after a long day of research, they sat together again near their campfire. The stars above were as beautiful as ever, and the planet's quiet hum seemed to settle around them. Mark watched as Lyra gazed up at the stars, her face reflecting a deep, almost distant thoughtfulness. He cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Lyra, I've been thinking about what you said, about love." She turned to him, her eyes meeting his. "What have you been thinking?" Her voice was soft, though it carried an undercurrent of curiosity. Mark hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I know you said you didn't understand love the way humans do, but I can't help how I feel. I think about you constantly. Even now, when we're sitting here, I feel like you're the only thing that matters." He paused, searching her face for any sign of understanding. "I know it's complicated. I know we're from different worlds, and maybe it's foolish to expect anything more. But I need you to know that this feeling is real." Lyra didn't speak immediately. She turned her gaze back to the fire, her expression unreadable. Mark could see the wheels turning in her mind. The silence stretched out, and for a moment he wondered if she would respond at all. Finally, Lyra spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mark, I cannot return your feelings the way you want me to. I do not know how to. My people, we do not experience emotions in the same way as you. We form connections, yes, but they are different. I cannot pretend to understand the depth of what you feel." Her words hit him like a cold wave, and for a moment, Mark felt as though the ground beneath him had shifted. He had expected some kind of response, some small acknowledgement that they shared something, even if it wasn't the kind of love he wanted. But instead, Lyra's words left him feeling more isolated than ever. "I don't understand," Mark said quietly, his voice filled with confusion and hurt. I thought maybe there was a chance that we could find something together." Lyra's eyes softened and she reached out, placing a hand gently on his. Her touch was warm and it gave him a small sense of comfort, though the pain in his chest remained. "I do not wish to hurt you, Mark," she said, her voice steady but filled with something else, something like regret. "But I cannot offer you what you seek. It is not in me to love in the way you do. I wish I could make you understand that." Mark pulled his hand back slowly, as if the warmth had suddenly disappeared. He felt a wave of frustration rise in him. "I don't need you to love me the way I do. I just wanted you to see me, to understand that I care about you and that maybe, just maybe, you could feel the same." Lyra's expression remained calm, but there was a sadness in her eyes that Mark couldn't ignore. "I see you, Mark. I understand more than you think, but I cannot feel as you do. My people's way of connecting with others is different. We do not speak of love the way you do. We do not express it with words, but through shared experience and understanding." Mark felt a bitter taste in his mouth, as though something he had hoped for had been slowly slipping through his fingers. He had known deep down that Lyra could never return his feelings in the way he wanted. But hearing her say it so plainly, so matter-of-factly, left him feeling empty. "So, what does that mean for us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lyra was quiet for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the fire once more. "It means that we are companions, Mark," she said finally. "We are learning from each other. We are sharing this time, this space, but it is not love as you know it. It is something else, a connection that cannot be defined by your human terms. The words stung, but Mark couldn't deny the truth in them. He had always known that Lyra was different. She came from a place so far beyond his understanding that love, as he knew it, could never be a part of it. Yet there was still something between them, something he couldn't ignore. I can live with that, Mark said, though the words felt heavy. I don't expect you to love me, but I can't pretend that what I feel for you isn't real. Lyra looked at him then, her eyes searching his face. I know it is real, Mark, and I respect that. But I cannot change what I am. I can only offer you my understanding, my friendship, and my presence. I hope that is enough for you. Mark nodded slowly, though a part of him was still aching. He didn't have the answers he wanted, but he knew one thing for certain. No matter how hard it was, he couldn't walk away from her. He wasn't ready to let go of the connection they had, even if it wasn't the kind of love he had imagined. For now, it had to be enough. He saw a hint of vulnerability in her eyes. Yes, I care for you, Mark. I care for you in a way that is hard to explain even to myself. It is not love as you know it, but it is real. It is a bond that grows as we share our experiences. Mark nodded slowly, trying to absorb her words. I don't fully understand it, but I can live with that. I can accept that this is what we have. I just don't want to lose it. Lyra's eyes softened even more, and she reached out to touch his hand gently. You won't lose it. I am not leaving you, Mark. This connection between us is important. We may not have the same kind of relationship you hoped for, but we share something that is rare and valuable. Mark's chest tightened at her words, a mixture of relief and sadness filling him. He had been afraid that their bond would fade, that the distance between them would become too great to bridge. But Lyra's assurance gave him a sense of peace, even if he didn't fully understand everything she had said. Thank you, he said quietly, looking at their hands, still touching. That means more than you know. Lyra smiled, and for the first time in days, Mark felt a true warmth between them. It wasn't the kind of warmth he had imagined, but it was warmth nonetheless. He had come to realize that maybe what he wanted, what he had hoped for, wasn't the only thing that mattered. What they shared now, this quiet bond of understanding, was something special in its own right. Over the next few days, Mark and Lyra continued their exploration of the planet. Each day, bringing new discoveries, they found strange crystals that seemed to hum with energy, ancient ruins that hinted at a civilization long gone, and hidden caves filled with beautiful minerals that glowed faintly in the dark. Mark was amazed by the things they found, but, more than that, he was amazed by the way Lyra's presence made every discovery feel even more significant. It was as though she brought a sense of wonder with her wherever she went. As they worked side by side, Mark began to notice something else, a quiet, unspoken communication between them. They didn't always need to speak to understand each other. A glance, a subtle movement, and they knew exactly what the other was thinking. It was like they were in tune with each other in a way he had never experienced with anyone else. One evening, as they sat on a cliff overlooking the planet's vast landscape, Mark spoke again, his voice thoughtful. Lyra, I've been thinking a lot about the way you see the universe, the way you approach things. It's so different from how we do. Lyra looked at him, her expression curious. How do you see it, Mark? Mark took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. We humans, we're always looking for meaning, for purpose. We want to know why things happen the way they do. We want answers. But you seem to just accept things. You see the universe for what it is without needing to label it or control it. Lyra's eyes softened and she nodded slowly. It is true. My people do not seek answers in the same way. We do not need to understand everything to appreciate it. We accept the universe for its complexity and its simplicity. We live in harmony with it, rather than trying to force it into a shape we understand. Mark stared at her, struck by her words. I think I'm starting to understand. Maybe I've been looking for answers all along, when what I really needed was to just experience things as they are. Lyra smiled, a genuine, warm smile that made Mark's heart flutter. Perhaps that is the lesson you are meant to learn, Mark. To live with the uncertainty, to accept the unknown without fear. Mark smiled back, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. He still didn't fully understand everything about Lyra, or her people, or the connection they shared. But, for the first time, he felt okay with that. Maybe he didn't need all the answers. Maybe the only thing that mattered was the present moment, the bond they had, the companionship they shared, and the quiet understanding between them. And in that moment, Mark realized that sometimes the most important thing wasn't finding the answers. It was simply accepting what was and embracing it with an open heart. The days on the alien planet seemed to pass in a blur. Mark and Lyra continued their explorations, venturing deeper into the unknown terrain, discovering strange crystals and uncovering remnants of long-forgotten civilizations. Every discovery, no matter how small, felt more significant with her by his side. But despite the wonders around them, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more between them, something deeper than just companionship. The bond between them had grown over time. At first, it had been a quiet connection, a shared understanding of their differences. But now it was more than that. It was a constant, unspoken awareness of each other, of their presence, their thoughts, their emotions. Even without words, they seemed to communicate effortlessly. A glance, a gesture, and they knew what the other was thinking. It was on one of their evening walks, as they explored the edge of a cliff overlooking the distant horizon, that Mark finally gathered the courage to ask what had been on his mind for days. "Lyra," he began, his voice quiet but steady. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, that you can't love the way humans do, and I get it, I really do. But sometimes I wonder." Lyra turned to him, her expression soft, her eyes reflecting the stars above. "What do you wonder, Mark?" He took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "I wonder if maybe what we have isn't so different after all. I don't know how to explain it, but there's something about the way we connect, something that goes beyond just companionship. I feel it in the way we work together, in the way we understand each other. Even without love as I know it, there's still something meaningful here." Lyra's gaze remained steady, her expression unreadable for a moment. Mark felt his heart race, unsure if he was overstepping some invisible line between them. "I know I can't change what I feel, Mark," Lyra said slowly, her voice thoughtful. "And I know I cannot love you in the way that humans love. But what you speak of, it is not something I am unfamiliar with. We do not call it love, but we have a deep connection with those who walk with us on our journeys, a connection that is built through time, through shared experiences." Mark's chest tightened as her words sank in. "So, you do understand?" Lyra nodded, her eyes locking with his. "I understand more than you realize. See, Mark, what you feel is not wrong. It is simply different from what I know. But it is real, and it is something that I value. The bond we share is not one of romantic love, but it is still something of great importance. It is built on respect, on understanding, and on the trust we have placed in each other." Mark let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The weight that had been pressing on his chest for so long began to lift, replaced by a sense of relief. He had been so focused on the idea of love that he had missed the subtle, yet powerful connection they had been building all along. "I can accept that," he said softly. "I think I always have. I just needed to hear it from you." Lyra reached out and placed a hand on his arm, a gentle gesture that felt both comforting and sincere. "And I needed to hear you say it, Mark, to hear you acknowledge the bond we share. It is not what you hoped for, but it is still something we can both cherish." For the first time in days, Mark felt at peace. The confusion, the hurt, the uncertainty, everything seemed to fade away, replaced by a quiet understanding between him and Lyra. They might never love each other in the traditional sense, but that didn't mean their connection was any less important. As the days went on, The two of them continued to explore the planet, each new discovery reinforcing the bond between them. They spoke less of their feelings and more about the world around them, about the strange energy they had discovered in the planet's caves, the remnants of the long-lost civilization they had found buried deep within the Earth. Every moment was a new opportunity for learning, for growth, and for a deeper understanding of each other. But even in the midst of all their discoveries, Mark couldn't help but notice how much he had changed since meeting Lyra. He had come to the planet looking for answers, but what he had found was something far more valuable, a new way of seeing the universe. Lyra had shown him that there was more to life than searching for answers. Sometimes the most important thing was simply to experience the world as it was, to accept things as they came, without needing to control them or force them into a mold. 1. Evening, as they sat beneath the stars, Lyra turned to Mark and spoke again, her voice soft but steady. "You have learned much since we first met. I can see it in the way you view the world now. You no longer seek answers to every question. You simply accept what comes." Mark smiled, feeling a sense of contentment wash over him. "I guess I've learned a lot from you. You've helped me see things differently." Lyra's expression softened, and for a moment Mark thought he saw a flicker of something deeper in her eyes, something like pride, or perhaps affection. "And you have helped me, Mark. I have learned to understand more about your kind and about what it means to truly connect with another." Mark's heart warmed at her words. He had never imagined that his journey to this far-off world would lead to anything like this. He had come looking for adventure, but what he had found was something far more meaningful. A bond with someone who, though different, had become a part of his life in ways he couldn't have predicted. He looked at Lyra, his companion, his friend, and he realized that he no longer needed to search for answers. What they had was enough. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't what he had expected, but it was real. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. The days had begun to blend into each other, and the peaceful rhythm of life on the alien planet had become something Mark looked forward to every morning. Though he still felt the occasional ache in his heart, a reminder of what he had hoped for, he had come to accept the connection he shared with Lyra. It was not the love he had imagined, but it was something far deeper than he had expected. It was a bond built on trust, understanding, and shared experiences, and in its own way it was more than enough. One morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Mark stood outside their camp, watching the light slowly fill the valley. The planet had a quiet beauty to it, one that was easy to overlook at first glance, but once you took the time to really see it, you realized how much it had to offer. The air was thin, but it carried a freshness that made Mark feel alive. He glanced over at Lyra, who was standing a little farther off, her back to him as she surveyed the landscape. She seemed to be lost in thought, her gaze fixed on the horizon. For a moment, Mark just watched her, marveling at the grace with which she moved, the quiet strength in her posture. It was hard to believe that this woman, so different from him, had become such an important part of his life. She was an alien, yet in many ways she felt more human than anyone he had ever met. "Lyra," he called softly, his voice carrying across the open space between them. She turned to him, her expression unreadable but calm. "Yes, Mark?" He hesitated for a moment, unsure of what he wanted to say. There were so many things he could ask, so many thoughts swirling in his mind, but in the end he decided to just speak from the heart. "I've been thinking about how much things have changed since we first met," he said, taking a few steps toward her. "When I landed on this planet, I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know what I was looking for, but now I realized that what I found wasn't just another planet to explore. It was you." Lyra's eyes softened and she stepped closer, her presence calming as always. "I did not expect to find someone like you either, Mark. When I came here, I was simply observing, learning. I did not expect to form such a connection with a human." Mark smiled, a genuine warmth filling his chest. "It's strange, isn't it? How life can surprise you like that. I never imagined I'd end up here on this planet with you. But now that I am, I can't imagine being anywhere else." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there, watching the sun rise higher in the sky, the world around them slowly coming to life. It was as if the planet itself was waking up just like them, slowly, gently, but with a sense of purpose. Finally, Lyra broke the silence, her voice quiet, but clear. "What will you do now, Mark? What path will you choose?" Mark thought for a moment, the question surprising him. He had never really thought beyond the next day, the next discovery. But now that he was faced with the question, he realized that he had found something here, something he didn't want to lose. Lyra, the bond they shared. "I'm not sure," he said honestly, looking down at the ground. "I never planned to stay on this planet, to make a life here. But now, I don't think I want to leave, not yet. I want to keep learning from you, keep exploring. I want to see where this journey takes us." Lyra nodded slowly, her gaze thoughtful. "You are not alone in this, Mark. You have me, and I will walk with you as we continue our journey. Together, we will learn more about this world and about each other." Mark looked up at her, feeling a surge of gratitude. He had never imagined that an alien woman could become so important to him. But here they were, standing together on a distant world, with no idea what the future held. All he knew was that, for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "for being here, for being with me." Lyra's eyes met his, and for the first time, Mark saw something more in them than he had before. It wasn't just understanding or friendship. It was something deeper. A shared connection, a mutual respect, and perhaps in the quietest way, a form of affection that transcended words. "You are welcome, Mark," Lyra said softly. "I too have found something in this journey, something unexpected but precious." Mark smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace settle in his chest. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know where this path would lead or how long it would last. But for the first time, he realized that the journey itself was the answer. It wasn't about finding the destination or the perfect solution. It was about the experiences, the people, and the connections along the way. And as he looked at Lyra, standing by his side, he knew that whatever came next, he wasn't alone. They had something rare and meaningful, a bond that neither distance nor time could easily break. It wasn't the love he had once dreamed of, but it was real. And that was enough. Together they walked toward the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Whatever path they chose, Mark knew that they would face it together, as companions, as friends, and as something more than either of them had ever expected.